In August 1936, Adolf Hitler sat in the Berlin Olympic Stadium, surrounded by the upper echelon of the Nazi regime, anxiously waiting to witness what he believed would be a demonstration of Aryan racial supremacy. Before him, on the track, a young African-American son of sharecroppers from rural America named Jesse Owens prepared to run and, unknowingly, to dismantle in just seconds one of the greatest ideological fantasies of the 20th century. But there was a secret hidden in plain sight, silent and almost invisible, in Jesse Owens' feet as he positioned himself at the starting line. The spiked running shoes he wore were neither common nor neutral. They had been custom-made by two German brothers, extremely skilled craftsmen, who at that moment were officially registered members of the Nazi Party. Without the public realizing it, that detail transformed the race into not just a historic sporting event, but also a profound contradiction between ideology, politics, and business. But to understand how those shoes got there, we need to go back to the beginning, to a Germany devastated by war, economic crisis, and the loss of national identity, where survival required much more than manual skill. It required resilience, ambition, and a relentless vision for the future. It was in this hostile environment that Adi and Rudolf Dassler emerged as extraordinarily skilled and visionary entrepreneurs, capable of identifying opportunities where almost no one else saw any possibility for growth. Together, they transformed a small artisan workshop into a true monopoly in the emerging athletic footwear market, combining technical innovation, product-focused creativity, and an aggressive and precise business strategy. However, when this partnership broke down, what could have been just a rational business separation evolved into a deep, personal, and lasting rivalry, with impacts that exceeded the boundaries of the company and the family itself. This is not just a story about shoes or famous brands. It's a powerful business narrative marked by ambition, entrepreneurial courage, and also family conflicts, where personal disputes, wounded egos, and resentments forever tarnished the legacy of two titans of modern capitalism. A rivalry so intense that it divided the small village of Herzogenaurach, the famous town of bent necks, and that, paradoxically, gave birth to two global sports empires whose combined market value today exceeds $50 billion. You wear their logos every day. Now, meet the business titans behind these brands, relentless and visionary entrepreneurs whose ambition built global empires, but whose family war left deep marks on business history. The story begins in 1919, during one of the darkest periods in modern German history. The country was physically and economically destroyed by World War I, politically humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles, and suffocated by hyperinflation that made money practically worthless from one day to the next. Wages lost value within hours, unemployment was rising rapidly, and in the small Bavarian town of Herzogenaurach, survival was already a daily challenge. In this context of extreme scarcity, the Dassler family wasn't thinking about innovation or growth, but simply about putting food on the table and getting through another day. It was in this hostile environment that Adolf Adi Dassler, the younger brother, began to reveal an uncommon talent. Quiet, meticulous, and deeply introverted, Adi possessed a rare skill for hand stitching and an almost obsessive eye for technical details. While other men sought temporary jobs in failing factories or depended on occasional work, he isolated himself in his mother's laundry room, just 200 square feet, and transformed it into a small makeshift workshop. Without access to quality leather, without electricity, and without any kind of industrial machinery, Adi resorted to whatever was available. He dismantled abandoned military helmets, repurposed soldiers' bread bags, and cut discarded parachutes, carefully sewing everything by hand. More than simply patching together scarce materials, Adi constantly experimented. He tested shapes, reinforcements, types of stitching, and adjustments, seeking to create shoes that were lighter, more durable, and, above all, better adapted to human movement. Every mistake became a lesson. Every pair produced served as a prototype for the next. What, at first glance, seemed like just a desperate response to poverty and lack of alternatives ended up becoming, silently, the embryo of one of the greatest revolutions in the history of athletic footwear. Adi's vision was simple in form but profoundly revolutionary in content: to create specialized shoes for each sport, designed not just to protect feet, but to directly improve the athlete's performance. He believed that a runner, a jumper, or a soccer player should never wear the same type of shoe, because each sport required different movements, impacts, and support. For Adi, the shoe wasn't an accessory, but a performance tool. However, there was a fundamental problem. A brilliant product, by itself, doesn't build a business if no one knows it exists or if there aren't people willing to buy it and trust it. Adi was convinced that athletes in different sports needed specific solutions, adjusted to the body and the dynamics of human movement. However, this reasoning ran into a crucial obstacle. Technical innovation without visibility doesn't generate scale. A product, no matter how ingenious, wouldn't be able to sustain a business if it remained restricted to a small workshop or unknown outside its immediate circle. Someone was needed to take that idea to the world. This is exactly where Rudolf enters the scene. Rudolf Dassler was everything Adi was not. Extrovert, confident, and naturally charismatic, he possessed a rare talent for dealing with people, negotiating, and creating business connections. While Adi spent hours perfecting every stitch and testing new designs, Rudolf crossed cities and villages with a suitcase full of shoes, visiting sports clubs, coaches, athletic associations, and shopkeepers. He understood the market, knew how to read customers' needs, and turned curiosity into concrete sales. Not surprisingly, he quickly became the commercial face of the operation and the main person responsible for expanding the business. In 1924, by combining Adi's technical genius with Rudolf's commercial skills, the brothers formalized their partnership and officially registered Gebrüder Dassler Schuhfabrik, the Dassler brothers' shoe factory. It was at this moment that exceptional artisan talent and a natural vocation for sales combined to give birth to an enterprise with ambitions much larger than that small German town could imagine. The dynamic between the brothers seemed perfect and, for a time, worked almost flawlessly. Adi focused on creating some of the best shoes in the world, dedicating himself to innovation, comfort, and athletic performance, while Rudolf took these products to market in a country desperate for heroes, sports victories, and symbols of overcoming after years of crisis. This combination of technical excellence with commercial aggressiveness began to generate concrete results quickly. In 1928, athletes wearing shoes produced by the Dasslers were already winning gold medals at the Amsterdam Olympics, an extraordinary achievement for a company that had started in an improvised laundry room. The small family business was then becoming internationally recognized in the sports world, opening doors for new contracts and opportunities. However, beneath this trajectory of success, a silent problem was beginning to form. The brothers' wives, Kathy and Friedel, openly detested each other, and what seemed like a domestic conflict was, little by little, contaminating the company environment. Small personal disputes turned into distrust, and daily coexistence became increasingly difficult. As the money increased, prestige grew, and the business gained greater proportions, the brothers began to question themselves internally. Who was, after all, truly responsible for that success? The hand that designed, tested, and stitched each shoe with almost artisan precision, or the voice that knew how to sell it, negotiate it, and take it to the world? And now, the question is for you. In a business, who is more important, operations or sales? Leave your opinion in the comments. Regardless of who was more important within the company, the answer ended up coming from outside. In 1933, politics knocked on the factory door, and the brothers were forced to choose a path to continue surviving and operating. It was no longer just about internal business decisions, but about adaptation to a new and rigid external environment. In May 1933, Germany's landscape changed irreversibly. The National Socialist German Workers' Party rapidly consolidated power, reconfiguring the economy, industry, and the very rules of survival for private companies throughout the country. For many businessmen of the time, aligning with the new regime was not necessarily seen as an ideological choice, but as a pragmatic strategy to continue operating and, if possible, growing in a country increasingly controlled by the state. Access to raw materials, contracts, and licenses became dependent on clear political connections. For the Dassler brothers, that historical moment represented not just a political or moral crisis, it also represented a concrete window of opportunity within a closed and highly selective system. On May 1, 1933, just 3 months after Hitler came to power, Adi and Rudolf Dassler officially joined the Nazi Party, a documented fact that is often softened or omitted in later corporate narratives. This membership opened doors in a system that favored party members in access to public contracts, institutional supplies, and large organizations linked to the regime. The Dasslers began producing footwear for entities associated with the state, including the Hitler Youth, which guaranteed them production volume, financial stability, and accelerated growth. In a context of directed economy, state control, and widespread scarcity, the ability to read the historical moment and strategically position the business caused demand for their products to skyrocket. What had been a regional workshop was rapidly consolidating as a factory in full expansion, integrated into the new economic model imposed by the regime. By 1936, the Dassler brothers were selling about 200,000 pairs of shoes per year, an impressive number for the time and unusual for a company that had emerged little more than a decade earlier in an improvised laundry room. The business was profitable, the factory was expanding, and the brand was beginning to be recognized beyond Germany's borders. Still, even in the face of this concrete financial success, Adi Dassler was thinking several steps ahead. He possessed a clinical eye for unique marketing opportunities and understood, intuitively, that true long-term growth would come not just from political alliances or institutional contracts, but from the direct association between proven athletic performance and product credibility. For Adi, the Berlin Olympics weren't just another sporting event or a national celebration. They were the largest global showcase ever created up to that point, a stage where athletes from around the world competed under the eyes of the international press. Every victory, every broken record, reverberated far beyond the stadium. It was there that symbols, reputations, and narratives capable of crossing borders were built. Adi understood that whoever could place their products on that stage, associated with athletic success, would have a commercial advantage difficult to replicate. It was in this context that he made a bold, risky, and potentially fatal decision. Jesse Owens was not German. He was a foreign, black, American athlete, exactly the opposite of the ideal propagated by the Nazi regime. Still, Adi chose to think like a businessman, not like a patriot. He saw something that few had the courage to admit. If the best athlete in the world won wearing his shoes, the commercial impact would be global and practically incalculable. Performance would speak louder than any ideology. Adi then packed a suitcase with his newest spiked shoes and personally drove to the Olympic Village to find Jesse Owens. In an environment charged with ideological surveillance, political propaganda, and regime control, that gesture could easily be interpreted as an act of disloyalty or even treason. However, for Adi Dassler, the extreme risk, though carefully calculated, was the necessary price to pay for exponential growth of his business and the consolidation of his long-term vision. This gamble worked spectacularly, exceeding any expectations. Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals and broke world records, 10.3 seconds in the 100 meters and 8.06 meters in the long jump, showing the world the power of skill and preparation combined with the right equipment. But the effect wasn't limited to the track. Publicly, Owens' success became directly and almost symbolically associated with the shoes he wore, the shoes from Gebrüder Dassler Schuhfabrik. The marketing strategy was as brilliant as it was bold. By placing the product on the world's most visible and competitive stage, Adi transformed a simple shoe into an icon of performance, excellence, and innovation, creating an immediate emotional connection between athlete and brand. Overnight, Gebrüder Dassler Schuhfabrik became a global reference, and athletes from all parts of the planet began seeking the famous Owens shoe, eager to achieve similar results. And today, we reflect on the price of risk. To what extent is it worth betting everything to make your brand legendary? Would you have the courage to face all obstacles, political or social, to transform your product into a symbol of absolute success? Leave your opinion in the comments and share your vision. The answer came in the following years, impressively and quickly. Between 1936 and 1939, sales skyrocketed exponentially, reflecting the impact of Owens' success and the growing reputation of Gebrüder Dassler Schuhfabrik. To keep up with demand, the brothers acquired a larger factory, equipped with more machines and space to expand production, and began employing nearly 100 people, a significant number for the time. The business prospered and wealth began to accumulate rapidly, transforming the small family operation into an emerging powerhouse in the athletic footwear sector. But success also functioned as a magnifying glass, amplifying any existing flaw or tension. Rudolf began to believe that Adi was too slow, too obsessed with adjusting every detail of the spikes, while neglecting opportunities to close large contracts and increase commercial reach. On the other hand, Adi saw Rudolf as a big talker, someone who valued persuasion and charm more than product quality and respect for the artisan craft. The disparity of visions, talents, and priorities transformed every interaction into a silent battle. Although money was pouring in and the empire was growing, the brothers could barely stand being in the same space, with tensions and resentments infiltrating every business decision and every daily conversation. Then came 1939. World War II began, plunging Germany into a conflict of devastating proportions. The Nazi regime no longer cared about sports shoes. The priority now was weapons, ammunition, and military equipment. The Dassler factory was quickly converted to meet the demands of the war effort. Instead of producing racing spikes and specialized footwear, the machines began manufacturing parts for the Panzerschreck, an anti-tank rocket launcher, and other military equipment. The precision instruments that Adi loved and manipulated with such dedication were transformed into tools of destruction, and the factory, once a laboratory of innovation, became part of the Nazi war machine. Meanwhile, Rudolf was drafted into the Wehrmacht, the Nazi army. Furious, he believed that Adi, who had been deemed essential and authorized to remain at the factory, had used his influence to manipulate him, ensuring he would be sent to the front lines, in great danger, possibly to die. The resentment between the brothers intensified, now mixing personal rivalry, feelings of betrayal, and the brutal context of war. The hatred between the brothers exploded viscerally one night in 1943. An intense Allied bombing forced both families to take refuge in the same air raid shelter, a cramped space charged with tension. Adi and his wife arrived last, carefully descending the improvised ladder that led to the shelter. As he set foot on the ground, Adi muttered with frustration and fatigue, "Those dirty bastards are back." He was clearly referring to the Allied bombers tearing through the sky over Herzogenaurach. However, Rudolf interpreted the phrase personally, convinced that Adi was referring to him and his family. The resentment planted that night would never be forgotten. It took deep root, feeding a silent rage that would last decades. From there on, the distrust and bitterness between the brothers became practically irreversible, transforming a simple disagreement into a historic personal conflict that would be reflected in every business decision both would make in the following years. The war ended, but the war between the brothers was just beginning. In 1945, American tanks entered Herzogenaurach. Rudolf was arrested by the U.S. Army, suspected of collaborating with the Gestapo. While rotting in an American internment camp, Rudolf was informed that someone close had testified against him. He knew exactly who it was: Adi. Meanwhile, Adi was winning over the American officers. He even manufactured custom spikes for them using tent canvas and rubber from fuel tanks. While Rudolf was in a cell, Adi was rebuilding the empire. When Rudolf was finally released from captivity in 1946, any possibility of reconciliation between the brothers seemed completely ruled out. The war years, accumulated distrust, and silent resentment had eroded any trace of friendship or collaboration. They tried, through insistence and perhaps obligation, to work together for 2 more years, but the toxic atmosphere inside the factory poisoned everything. Meetings were tense, decisions took forever, and employees felt constantly pressured to take sides in a dispute that went far beyond business. In 1948, it became inevitable to make a drastic decision. The brothers gathered all the employees and presented a clear but painful choice. Each employee had to decide who they wanted to continue their career with: stay with Adi or follow Rudolf. The tension was palpable. Each person's professional future depended on a simple declaration of loyalty. 2/3 of the employees chose to remain with Adi, valuing his technical vision and commitment to artisan quality. The sales team, on the other hand, went almost entirely to Rudolf, attracted by his commercial energy and talent for the market. From that moment on, the small town of Herzogenaurach was divided, and the rivalry between the brothers ceased to be just personal to become institutional, giving rise to two sports empires that would follow separate but equally ambitious paths. Rudolf, realizing that coexistence with Adi had become unbearable and that he needed to create his own identity, moved the entire operation to the other side of the Aurach River. Initially, he decided to name his new company Ruda, an abbreviation of Rudolf Dassler, but quickly realized that the name needed to convey more strength, speed, and a predator image in the competitive athletic footwear market. It was then that he chose Puma, a short, impactful name full of symbolism, speed, agility, and power, qualities he wanted immediately associated with his products. Meanwhile, Adi officially registered his own brand on August 18, 1949. He combined his nickname Adi with the first letters of his last name, Das, creating a simple and direct name, Adidas. For Adi, the focus continued to be innovation and technical perfection. Every product detail spoke for itself, making the brand a reference for quality and performance in high-level sports. Gebrüder Dassler Schuhfabrik, which for decades had been the brothers' shared dream, ceased to exist. What had once been a united workshop, full of passion and collaboration, had now transformed into two separate entities, each with its own philosophy and strategy. The sneaker wars had begun, not just between two brothers, but between two business visions that, despite the rivalry, would help shape the history of world sports. Every step taken by Adidas and Puma carried the promise of innovation, competition, and the unbridled ambition to dominate an expanding global market. The separation of the brothers had profound and lasting consequences for the entire town of Herzogenaurach, which became known as the Town of Bent Necks. The rivalry wasn't limited to the factories. It was visible in the streets, in people's looks, and in their gestures. Before starting any conversation, it was common for people to examine each other's shoes to determine which faction they belonged to. If you worked at Puma, you avoided buying bread from the Adidas bakery. If you drank, you only frequented bars of your own brand. Mixed marriages were treated almost like public scandals, and any rapprochement between rival families was observed with suspicion. Children grew up learning to identify the logos from an early age, and schoolmates divided themselves according to the brand of shoes they wore. The entire town wore shoes from both brands, and every step through the streets became a silent declaration of loyalty. It was a true silent civil war, fought with leather, rubber, and business pride. And in the midst of it all, the brothers' practical action, on one side creating innovations and perfect products, on the other building unbeatable marketing and distribution strategies, kept the town in constant tension, while simultaneously propelling each brand to new heights of excellence and competitiveness. Herzogenaurach wasn't just a divided town. It was the battlefield of two empires that continued to fight with almost surgical precision, each shaping the destiny of world sports. Puma had the most aggressive and strategic sales team, capable of placing its products in all stores and sports clubs in Germany, quickly conquering the commercial and mass market. But Adidas had a trump card that no sales team could overcome: superior products, the result of Adi Dassler's artisan obsession with perfection and athletic performance. Each shoe was tested, measured, and adjusted with almost scientific precision, ensuring that the athlete had not just comfort, but a real mechanical advantage in every movement. The turning point in this historic rivalry came during the 1954 World Cup in Switzerland. West Germany, considered the underdog, faced the Hungarian team, known as the Magical Magyars, an almost invincible team at the time. To make matters worse, intense rain transformed the field into a real mud pit, making the game even more unpredictable and dangerous. It was in this challenging scenario that Adi Dassler revealed his secret weapon: the world's first screw-in cleats, true technological innovations that allowed the player to adjust the length of the cleats according to field conditions. While the Hungarians struggled to maintain stability with their traditional shoes, the Germans could change the cleats during halftime, guaranteeing perfect traction and superior control. Germany won 3-2. This technical detail, the result of months of obsessive experimentation in the small Herzogenaurach workshop, would be decisive for what would become known as the Miracle of Bern, proving that in the duel between marketing and product, innovation could turn the game in a spectacular way. Adidas became the absolute queen of soccer. On the other hand, Puma couldn't stand still. In 1970, the inherited rivalry hadn't died with the previous generation. On the contrary, it had been passed on as a legacy. The sons of the founding brothers, Horst Dassler, leading Adidas, and Armin Dassler, at the head of Puma, continued the battle of strategies, marketing, and innovation in an even more sophisticated way. Every move was calculated, every contract analyzed like a move in corporate chess, always trying to outdo the other. Before the 1970 World Cup, the two companies signed what appeared to be a peace treaty with Pelé, known as the Pelé Pact. The agreement declared that the Brazilian star was too expensive for either company and that trying to sign him would result in a price war that would ruin both. On the surface, it seemed prudent and civilized, but, as in any commercial war, appearances didn't always reflect reality. And the truth was that no one intended to comply with the agreement. Moments before the opening whistle of the quarterfinals, Pelé asked the referee for a few moments to tie his cleats. The cameras, almost cinematically, moved closer, capturing every detail. Millions of viewers around the world clearly saw the white stripe of Puma on the star's feet. Armin Dassler had orchestrated a bold move, paying Pelé $120,000, equivalent to about $900,000 today, just to tie his laces at the right moment and be filmed. Adidas, which had trusted the integrity of the pact, was furious. Armin's bold maneuver not only guaranteed immediate global visibility for Puma, but also reignited the war between the two brands, demonstrating that in the fight for power, creativity and audacity often override formal rules. From that instant, the battle ceased to be just about shoes. It became a war of marketing on a global scale, with each brand seeking to surpass the other in reach, influence, and prestige. Rudolf Dassler died in 1974, ending a life marked by commercial genius, intense rivalry, and tireless ambition. 4 years later, in 1978, Adi Dassler also left this world, ending the chapter of one of the best-known family conflicts in business history. Despite sharing the same small cemetery in Herzogenaurach, the legacy of rivalry persisted even in final rest. The two were buried at the farthest points possible, separated by the entire extent the grounds allowed. Even in death, the division that had begun in life persisted as a symbolic reflection of the tension that dominated their existences. For the village that sheltered them, their graves became tangible reminders of a story of ambition, creativity, and conflict, where extraordinary success coexisted with irreconcilable differences, eternalizing the contrast between brothers who built empires but never reconciled. While the Dassler family consumed itself with internal rivalries, burning energy and attention on disputes that seemed never-ending, they didn't notice the real threat growing silently on the other side of the Atlantic. In Oregon, USA, a young entrepreneur named Phil Knight started modestly, selling Japanese running shoes directly from the trunk of his car. With market vision, courage to experiment with new strategies, and absolute focus on seizing opportunities that the Dasslers ignored, Knight slowly built a loyal and enthusiastic customer base. While Adidas and Puma spent efforts winning the war against each other, Nike studied the American consumer, innovated in marketing, and invested in local athletes. When the Dassler heirs finally noticed what was happening, it was too late. Nike had already conquered the running and fitness market in the United States, establishing itself as a global brand and showing that sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't in front of you, but off your radar. Today, the Dassler family no longer controls either company. Adidas and Puma are publicly traded corporations, global competitors, but the numbers are still impressive. In 2024, Adidas recorded revenues of nearly €23.7 billion, while Puma generated €8.8 billion. Despite all the rivalry, the combination of one brother's bold marketing vision and the other's innovative and creative skills gave birth to two sports empires worthy of titans, brands that defined modern sports and transformed small family workshops into global giants. It's proof that even amid personal conflicts, talent and strategy can create legacies that transcend generations. Adi and Rudolf Dassler started in a laundry room without electricity and, even facing enormous historical and personal challenges, transformed their talent and vision into global sports empires. They showed that a combination of innovation, strategy, and courage can transform simple ideas into billion-dollar businesses. More than a story of rivalry, it's a story of success, entrepreneurial vision, and perseverance in the face of any adversity. This family showed that personal conflicts and obstacles don't need to be excuses for business failure. They can and should become fuel to seek improvement, growth, and innovation. To what extent would you use challenges and difficulties as momentum to transform your own business into something extraordinary? Share your opinion in the comments and keep following to discover how Nike ended up surpassing these two giants.